Welcome to Comics on Parole. My name is Dan Glazer. How you doing, Al?
Good. How's it going?
Fine, fine. You know, hey Al, did you watch the debates?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah.
You know, that debate was so grueling for both of them, for Hillary and Donald, was so grueling that after, in order to relax, Donald went back to the locker room to regather his thoughts, and Hillary went home to delete a few emails.
But there you go.
But you know, it's very difficult to decide who to vote for. Because I just read Hillary's given away a solar-powered calculator with each vote, and Donald's given away a travel alarm clock. Two wonderful gifts, very hard to choose from.
Exactly.
You know, I write these jokes myself, you understand. Yes, I do. So anyway, go ahead.
I like your Facebook jokes better.
Thank you. That was a Facebook joke.
Oh, well, there you go.
Okay. Anyway, we have a very big show, a real exciting show today, because it's a very big honor to have Art Harris from CNN, Entertainment Night, and more than that. But briefly, we want to talk about the election just briefly. You know, it is a tough election, so I decided to, I don't know if you remember this young man, I've decided to endorse Mason Reese. Remember Mason Reese? Put his picture up. Mason Reese, I don't know if you see, he was in a lot of commercials as a little kid. I don't know if you could see this. Mason Reese was in every commercial in the 70s as a little kid. And he's decided to run for president. I don't know which party he's on, but let's show a brief commercial of his when he was a little boy. You'll remember him then.
His t-shirt.
Where's my Post Raisin Bran?
I've got the Post Raisin Bran. 'Cause I just wanted to tell you, this cereal's got a lot of delicious raisins. And now you get fun stickers too. Just peel them off, and you can stick them on almost anything. There's 3 cents in all, and you get 1 cent free in every specially marked box of Post Raisin Bran. Hey, Dad, how about the Post Raisin Bran?
Who would think this young man would grow up to be president? I mean, he may not be president, but he's running for president. And you can also buy his T-shirt. I think you just go to masonforpresident.com and you can buy one of his T-shirts. But I'm voting for Mason Reese for president. There you go. Very good. Now let's briefly take it to the Atlanta Comedy Theater commercial. And we'll have our first guest and only guest.
American Hearts Radio Entertainment Network is proud to announce that Dan Glazer's Comics on Parole Open Mouth Night will be held on Wednesday night at Atlanta Comedy Theater in Atlanta, Georgia, where you could get glazed every week with Dan Glazer. Dan has a great success with his Comics on Parole Open Mouth Night. Now fate has brought Comics on Parole to a larger stage at the Atlanta Comedy Theater. Come see the Comics on Parole Open Mic at the Atlanta Comedy Theater. This is a show up, go up, for 45 minutes before the scheduled shows. 4650 Jimmy Carter Boulevard, number 114B. Go to www.atlcomedytheater.com. And don't forget to check out Comics on Parole web TV series every first and third Tuesday of every month at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on www.americanheartsradio.com web TV.
Welcome back. So right now what I'd like to... It's a big honor to have this young man on the show. He's 13 years with CNN, 2 Emmy Award-winning investigative reports, covered Hollywood, scoops, scandals, and politics for Entertainment Tonight. Also an entertainment special correspondent producer of 2008 presidential election, and much, much more. So let's welcome to the Comics on Parole desk, Mr. Art Harris. Hey, Art.
It's an honor.
You know, sit down for a second. You know, I've known you for a couple of years now, and you're so humble, very humble. And when I get to meet someone like you, it's not till I investigate what you have on your resume that I get a little intimidated. Because you're very, very accomplished. Wouldn't you say?
Lucky.
You have to make your own luck, right?
There you go.
You have to make
breaks,
your own
as my
luck.
dad used to say.
As a child, did you know you wanted to be a reporter or
No, I did a lot of, saying a lot of inappropriate things at the wrong time. And that seemed to be something that was shocking to some people. And I realized that, when you grow up, you can do that and you can make headlines.
That's right. So, I mean, did you want to be on TV as a youngster?
I never thought about that at all. But
how did you get into it?
I did get fascinated with Woodward and Bernstein. They were my heroes.
You worked with Woodward.
He was my editor. It was amazing, yes.
Yeah, we'll get into
Washington
that.
Post.
Wow. Yeah.
And this was just one of those storytelling things, but I went back and I found a bunch of letters I used to write my mother when I was little.
Right.
And they were kind of shocking. They made her feel like, oh, he's on the edge of death.
Right, right.
Or so he's about to walk into traffic, or
Right,
wherever we
right,
were.
right.
And so, shocking people, I think, was, I had some practice.
What was your degree in college?
Political science and French literature.
Oh, that enters not the French literature, but the political science. Let me tell you something. I'm from Indiana, and my local newswoman was Jane Pauley, who was a political science major, and our local weatherman was David Letterman. And all Jane Pauley did was drop off a resume at the TV station. She had no side issue, but she was very pretty, and she got hired. And David Letterman got fired because he said it was going to snow the size of basketball, sleet the size of basketballs, and they fired. He was kidding, but they fired him. But
I was in newspapers first. Which,
okay.
So back then, it was not just another pretty face.
Yes.
If you could write and you could, dig and investigate, things happen. And the Atlanta paper was my first newspaper.
Did you grow up in Atlanta?
I did. I'm one of the few
Oh
natives.
my God!
Yep.
You've seen a lot of changes here. You remember the big chicken was just a little chickie.
Yeah, out here on 41.
Yeah,
it was the only thing.
That's right. That's right. And the Stone Mountain probably before it was ever really a park.
I climbed Stone Mountain when I was not much.
And I heard it was like all grass, and it's wow. You've seen some boy.
It was the woods.
It was the woods.
Sticks.
It was the woods. Yeah. So you went to college. Where'd you go? University of Georgia.
I went to Duke.
Duke. My father had a big weight loss. He went to the rice diet at Duke University, and people like Colonel Sanders would go there, Lauren Green would go there, and they would take walks and everything. It's a tremendous university.
Who was the editor of Screw magazine? He was there. Al, what's his last name?
I know that the name's on the tip of my tongue.
There was a lot. In fact, I wound up helping a woman who went there get a book deal with called. She lost 300 pounds. Called Confessions of a Carb Queen.
She was on the rice diet?
How I lost 300 pounds eating pasta and learned to love me and sex again.
Oh, really?
Yes. And she was on Entertainment Tonight. She was on.
And she wrote the book. You pushed her to write the book.
Yeah, she and her sister wanted to write a book. I saw her. She was in the New York Times Sunday magazine, and I read about her. And I called her, and I said, "You've got something here." And she was a great talker, and so was her sister from New York,
right?
A sales gal, and she had gotten really fat, and I just had to say, look, if you are willing to talk about anything, then I think we can sell this book. And she said, what do you mean? I said, fat sex.
Is that what it's called?
No, people want to know about fat sex. Okay. So that's what and she said, okay, that's fine. So she talked about her relationships, and that's all I'll say about that. But people can get it. It's
what's it called?
On Amazon. It's called Confessions of a Carb Queen.
Oh, okay.
And her name is Susan Blech, Blech.
Carb. Okay.
It's a great little paperback, and
So when I was second grade, my dad weighed almost 300 pounds. He went to the rice diet. I was gone almost 3 months. And we spent 2 weeks with him. And believe me, when they call it a rice diet, it's a rice diet. They like one little piece of rice on it. It was.
Chicken, boneless chicken.
It was bad. It was bad. I don't. They probably still do it. But you graduated from Duke, which is an amazing university.
I couldn't get in now. My brother teaches there.
Right.
But, it was
great. They've upped the standards.
I wrestled, and because I'd gone to boarding school, I knew how to study, so it was okay. I could get good grades, and I had a great time.
And it's only $100,000 a quarter to go there.
Well, back then I think it was not too bad.
It's bad now. Okay, so you started in news. And then, how did you work into the television?
Well, I went from the Atlanta paper to San Francisco Examiner, and a great editor named Reg Murphy brought me out there to be a roving writer, and I got to cover all sorts of California things, and wound up in Plains, Georgia, covering Jimmy Carter's election. And Billy Carter was his brother, Billy Carter, who had a gas station and was the ultimate president's jokester. And
did you become friends with both of them?
I'm friendly with both of them, but they wanted me to profile Billy, and so he had to pretend that he was not very smart. and I discovered that he actually went to the local drugstore and bought all the paperbacks. And then he had to hide them so that the good old boys, when they came up to gas up, they wouldn't think that he was smarter than they were.
Really?
And so that's what happens in a small southern town. So I did a piece on Billy. I followed him around, and he took me to the Moose Lodge because he wanted to get me drunk and make a fool of me.
Right. Oh, really?
And so he was drinking, and I was trying to go into the men's room and scribble notes on a napkin because I knew I would never remember what he was saying.
Right, right.
And one of the guys said, "Have you ever seen him eat a goldfish, swallow a goldfish
Yeah.
with a beer chaser?" No.
Yeah.
He did it.
Oh, my God.
Anyway, I wrote about it. It was very funny. Of all things, Billy Graham was having lunch with the head of the Washington Post. I was told this later at Catherine Graham, and he remarked, "That was a great story, great profile of Billy Carter."
Right.
Okay, so who was that guy? And I got a call. Do you want to come work for the Washington Post?
So it's Washington Post. And so Billy Carter is very intelligent.
Yeah.
Well, you know, Jimmy Carter was one of our most highly educated.
He's an amazing man.
Yeah.
Amazing family.
A nuclear physicist or something along that line.
And he was a nuclear sub-officer in the
Yeah.
Navy officer. I was a Navy officer myself, and so, but to be on nuclear subs, you had to be.
And I read a story
very
how he had to go down into a nuclear reactor on the sub and save it or something. Very, very dangerous. Okay, so after the Washington Post, you went to work for CNN?
The Washington Post, I was in D.C. working for Bob Woodward.
And you do work, yeah.
Yeah, and
this is before Watergate?
This was after Watergate.
Yeah.
He was an amazing editor. But before that, I was a movie critic for the Weekend magazine.
I read that. I
was the worst.
Very short time.
I was
right?
the worst movie critic they'd ever had because there was not a movie I didn't like.
Right.
I mean, I gave raves to.
What was your least favorite movie?
I love Dirty Harry.
Yeah, I saw that.
But that was not cool in very liberal Washington.
Right, right.
And I interviewed Jane Fonda and Vanessa Redgrave. And,
Oh, really?
And Julia. And Jane was amazing, but Vanessa Redgrave, I said, "Ms. Redgrave, I got to ask you about your roles. You know, you pick these very political things, and you play a terrorist in this movie. Does that have to do
What
with
movie was it?
It was Julia.
Uh-huh.
Does it have to do with your kind of liberal leanings?"
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I have no idea. She made me feel like I was just really stupid, but I knew she just didn't want to answer the question.
Right.
So I said, "Ms. Redgrave, I'm sorry, but if you don't want to talk about it, then the interview's really over."
Yeah.
And so I left. Jane Fonda came in. For 40 minutes, she gave me her undivided attention. It was amazing.
She knew you'd cut her off if you did.
Oh, no. She was just a wonderful human being. I mean, I had never felt
So
this
Vanessa Redgrave quit. It was over real quickly.
Well, I mean, there's no purpose of me even talking to her.
Right,
She's
if she's
gonna
not-
deny
yeah,
that
interesting.
you know, the obvious.
Interesting.
And so, you know, later in Atlanta, my mother had been an actress for years, helped start Theater Atlanta here, late act, and a bunch of
Really?
very forward causes. She and several women started the first speech school for black children. They didn't have it. Public schools did not let any black child attend special
Right.
ed back then.
Yeah.
So they brought in a teacher. They trained her. She went to Clark, and she became the speech school.
And she had a theater as well?
Well, she was an actress from World War. She was in Winged Victory, and she traveled with the USO.
Let me write this down. Winged Victory. I'm
Winged
learning
Victory
things out
was
with you.
an old, a very, very old play turned into a movie.
Did she know the Julie Roberts family? Because they're from Smyrna. They had a theater here in Atlanta.
I don't know.
Oh,
But,
yeah.
but I do know that this was sort of a little culture for Atlanta. She was in Driving Miss Daisy and some TV movies. And so there was a benefit for the Theater Atlanta, and Jane Fonda came.
Uh-huh.
And I got to introduce my mother. And I said, I just have to say, Jane, if I may, years ago when I interviewed you at the Washington Post, you made me feel really smart.
Right, right.
And she turned and looked at my mother and looked at me and said, "Art, you are really smart." Hello.
But she remembered you real well, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, she was married to Ted Turner. at
Were
the
you
time.
friends with Ted? So you went to CNN
Yep.
after the Post.
At
Were
the
you
Post,
intimidated by Bob Woodward? Was that kind of intimidating?
he was a powerful figure.
Yeah, yes.
But he was really supportive of his people. I mean, he was amazingly charismatic.
Right,
in a
right.
quiet way. And,
Yeah.
so he really motivated to perform for him.
Well, he's still very viable. He's still out there.
He went on TV the other day and he
Yeah.
called actually Hillary's shenanigans corruption.
Oh,
Which I
that's
thought
what he
was-
talked about?
I thought that was interesting.
That is, people are being very objective about this election. They're being very.
Yeah.
Did you hear what's his name? Matthews? what he said the other day? And what about
But
Michael Moore, what he said?
Oh, well,
Just
yeah.
Google this stuff. You'll see
Yeah,
it. It's actually shocking.
You couldn't make it up.
No, you couldn't make it up.
If I were to pitch this as a movie
Yeah.
in Hollywood, they would laugh
could
you
make-
out. And I've made several TV movies based on my true stories.
Oh,
and
really?
the great thing about selling a true story is that the producers and executives out there cannot dispute what happened.
This
because
is
it's a
like
true
not,
story.
this is like not real. All I know is after this election, I'm going to Walt Disney World. So, anyway, okay. So, you moved to CNN, and you knew Ted.
Well, what happened? A little long story short. At the end of my working with the Washington Post, well, not the end, but one of the things I did was cover TV preachers, the falling Jim and Tammy, Jessica Hahn,
Right.
and, Jimmy Swaggart.
Yeah.
And so I went down to Charlotte, and my partner back then was Mike Isikoff, who's an amazing investigative reporter who went on to work with NBC, and he's the one who broke the Monica story.
Oh,
and
wow.
So here we were, and we were down at Jim and Tammy Land, and all sorts of things were happening. I was finding out they had air-conditioned dog houses, and they were using
I read that.
tax
Yes, I
exempt
did read that.
contributions from their listeners. They built a giant high-rise for the elderly, only they collected the money and never built it. So Jim Baker went to federal prison for that. In the meantime, he had a satellite dish. He had a tower that beamed his show up to the world. He was the only TV preacher back then, so he was the conduit for all the others.
Yeah,
and he was
he
very
started
flashy,
it.
and they all hated him. They wanted to bring him down and get that satellite dish, especially Jimmy Swaggart.
Yeah.
And so he was set up by this Jessica Hahn, who had been a babysitter.
Oh, it was a setup?
Well,
All this time it's been a setup?
Well, it's okay. He did what he... But, so that happened, and Jimmy Swaggart briefly got control.
And you were behind, you were all reporting that?
And then I wound up...
Reporting.
I was the one who found Jimmy Swaggart's hooker on Airline Highway.
Oh, my God.
And that's, he called a press conference in Baton Rouge, and he said he was going to sue me and CNN. And her name was Deborah Murphy, I'll never forget.
Yeah.
And No-Town Motel in Baton Rouge. And she said, so I said, Jimmy Swaggart says he's never kissed a woman other than his wife. Is he telling the truth? Long pause, looks at the scene, well, I don't believe he ever kissed me.
Yeah. Wow.
In any case, that happened, and
I believe
she
it.
wound up on Larry King, and I get a letter
You're
from
behind so much.
Oh, well,
More than you know.
Back then said, so Art, you're who would have dreamed that a gay preacher and a hooker church secretary could get you on nationally broadcast TV? Sometimes free speech can go too far. That was Ed Turner, amazing newsman. Anyway,
what year was that?
That would have been in 1990. Well, it was late 80s, but this was, when I went there, was 90.
Oh, gotcha. The reason we don't talk politics that much on this show is because our 5 regular viewers could really sway the election.
Yes.
So, anyway, just kidding. Yeah. Okay, so you went to CNN, and you have worked with many, many high-profile people. For instance, you covered the Michael Jackson story.
I did.
Let's play a brief clip of that.
Harris with artharris.com. You very closely covered the child molestation charges against him. He was acquitted. Art Harris, at this juncture, is there any suggestion drugs or alcohol were involved in his death?
Not at this point, Nancy. As you know, you were outside that courtroom. I was inside, and he did not look well, generally. Within a few feet of him one day, he didn't show up. A judge ordered him back to the house, back to the court when he said he was sick, came back in his pajamas. But back then, he looked like he was under the influence of some sort of a prescription drug, and who wouldn't need some sort of medication to get through a trial like that. Tremendous pressure, but there was no suggestion this time that he was under the influence of any drugs. I don't know about an autopsy. Can there be one, or can there be one avoided?
Art Harris, what do you know?
Nancy, just what the reports say, that they were called, they arrived, and he didn't make it.
What's really sad about that, because you can find these videos on artharris.com on YouTube, right?
artharris.com.
Okay.
Which I'd forgotten I even had. But
Yes, you could find all these, and one of them was a very sad recording of him. He was heavily medicated, and he was talking. It was very, very sad.
He couldn't sleep, and so he actually had an IV of something called propofol moved into his bedroom as sleeping meds, and he would give it to himself. And that is what you get, and I get, when we have anesthesia for taking our teeth out,
right,
and other things.
Oh, gotcha. Very, very sad story. Let's play a clip of Art with Geraldo.
Our pal reporter Art Harris has been on this case for months. He joins us from Florida. You know, Art, it sounds far-fetched, but is there any truth to these now widespread reports that this mystery tip that the woman in scrubs that we saw with the surveillance camera involves the child accidentally overdosing on some of the drugs that Misty and Ron were abusing, then they or someone takes her little body, weighs it down, and sinks it in a pond? Have you heard about that? Any truth to that?
Geraldo, they haven't connected it yet. I don't have confirmation on that. I do have information that the letter was somewhat, the tipster was related to a search that was done in the woods behind the trailer where Ronald was living with Haley and Misty. But the letter contents are...
So I just wanted to show these clips of the high-profile people, and you're really high-profile in yourself. In fact, you covered the Iraqi war.
I was an embedded correspondent with the 2nd
Right.
Marines, and you know, be careful what you wish for. I always wanted to be a war correspondent from Hemingway,
Really?
being Hemingway.
Yeah.
And you know, it has its amazing ups and downs, but these guys were not much older than my boys.
Yes.
And they wondered, "Gee, why do you want to be here, Mr. Harris?" I said, "Well, you all deserve great storytellers to tell what's happening to you." And then suddenly they realized I could get on my laptop in the middle of the desert. They said, "Gee, Mr. Harris, could I write my girlfriend or my wife?" And sure. So so what do you want to tell her, son? What's her name? Judy. What do you want to tell her? Do you want to tell her, I miss her and I'm fine.
Right.
Don't you want to tell her that you miss her beautiful blue eyes and
Yeah,
soft
yeah.
curve in her neck, soft skin? Yes, sir, write that. So I became the love letter writer.
Wow.
And they told me when to duck. We were, went from the border to a place called Nasiriyah, which was the bloodiest battle of the war, and got in a couple of friendly firefights in the middle of things, and 18 Marines were killed.
Oh, wow.
In this one firefight, caught between an Air Force A-10 that came in to support the Marines and the Fedayeen that were shooting at us as well. And they were blaming the Marines until I went back and interviewed eyewitnesses, and they had identified that it was an Air Force fighter, sadly, that came in and shot it.
It was friendly fire.
Well, yeah, and he was not able to recognize the vehicles, and that's the one thing that you learn as a fighter pilot, especially if you're doing close-in air support, is armor recognition.
Right.
And the U.S. has the only 5-sided vehicles in the world for troop carriers,
Right.
and he, for some reason, it was very tragic. And then after I did the story, the Pentagon reopened their investigation, and they exonerated the Marines.
Oh, my gosh.
So that was pretty moving. And anyway, it was just an amazing experience, and I have to tell you.
And you can see some of the clip, even the Iraqi, of you in Iraq, at that website.
Yeah, it's also on Vimeo. Art Harris Vimeo. Art Harris Investigates on Vimeo.
Okay.
.com.
Now, what we want to do now is, this is a comedy show for stand-up comics. So we're going to have Art do about 3 minutes of his comedy. Now,
Give him some background here. My son, as you know, is a great friend of Dan's, Josh Harris, an amazing comedian, just moved out to L.A. To do his fame and fortune. And I got to see him take the stage at the Ice House in Pasadena, where Letterman and a number of great comedians got their start. They've got Letterman's contract framed up there when he made $250 a week. So as a shout out to him, and I didn't want to do this, Dan. Okay, well, I took his class. He teaches stand-up comedy here, and some of the testimonials are amazing if you read them. And so I took it, and he says, write or talk about what you know about. So, you'll hear what I know about. So you want me to do it right here? Or?
Yeah, stand right where you're at.
So I take this as my first time doing stand-up, and I can't see anybody out there. It's a little scary for someone, especially if you're used to either memorizing your lines or having them fed to you, or you're asking questions. So here I am, and I get up there, and first of all, I have a confession to make. I'm bald, all over. But the great thing about being bald is that I get a great nickname. My wife calls me Smoothie King. And she gets to brag to all her girlfriends that she's got the cleanest bathrooms in town. Now, the other thing is, it's a good way to keep track of who's in the house. If there's a white hair in the bed, I know it's my dog. If there's a dark hair in the bed, I know it's my wife. If there's a blonde hair in the bed, I know I'm in trouble. I found one the other day, and I accused her of cheating before she could accuse me. I said, so who's the blonde? It's my girlfriend. Okay, well, I don't think we have to call the lawyer just yet. I think we can work this one out. Anyway, I used that to launch into a few other things, but that was developed. My wife helped me write that. So did Josh, and that's what you'll get if you take a class. No.
Is that video on YouTube? It's not on YouTube.
No, that's nowhere.
You need to put it on YouTube because you might get discovered. They'll get you on American's Got Talent. Now, speaking of Josh Harris, let's throw a. We're going to call Josh. Let's show a brief clip of his. He's in L.A. now, and we're going to show a brief clip. Not that one. Not the next one.
I've been looking for a soulmate, and I think I've really found someone special. You know, I started dating women my own age, but they just weren't old enough. They didn't have enough insight. So I upped the ante, went out with cougars, women in their 40s, but you know what I realized? Still weren't wise enough. But this lady has all the wisdom I need, cause she's 80. She's not a cougar, she's a saber-tooth. She's a little bit older and a little bit wiser. I swear that she speaks the truth. I've been with younger women and I've even been with cougars, but now I need a saber-tooth. I want an older woman with a hint of maturity, someone to keep me safe with her social security. She's got her own style, yeah, she's a trendsetter. Only girlfriend I've had that'll knit me a sweater. So I must know before I go. Would you be with me, my saber-tooth? I'd love to be your taste of youth. Be with me, my saber-tooth. I'd love to be your taste of youth. You're the love of my life, wanna make you my wife. Isn't it plain to see? I'd love to be the father of all of your kids, but they're 30 years older than me. I like my women like my wine, that's what I tell her. Aged 80 years and locked up in my cellar. Our movie date saved me a hefty amount, cause we get a student and senior discounts. So I must know before I go. Would you be with me, my saber-tooth? I'd love to be your taste of youth. Be with me, my saber-tooth. I'd love to be your taste of youth. I want you to wear my ring. Whoa.
Well, thank you so much, Art, for coming on the show. This truly has been an honor. We want to mention Josh Harris is in L.A., and he was recently, where did he perform?
Performed at the Pasadena Ice House, a legendary comedy club where Letterman got his start and had his framed first contract of $200, $250 a week on the wall.
Oh, my gosh.
Josh is up there, performs for 10 minutes, he gets off, and Arsenio Hall takes the stage.
Really?
Well,
I didn't know that.
And one of 20 people that night. So Josh says, Dad, now I can tell people I opened for Arsenio.
Wait, was Arsenio just trying some new jokes?
Yeah, he'd driven in from Studio City to try a few, and he talked about Trump, and he talked about Hillary.
Yeah, you got to do both.
Yeah, so
you don't want to alienate your crowd.
It was funny.
I did not know that. I saw that he performed it, but I didn't know he opened for Arsenio, kind of.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And he's doing great, and I'm real proud of him.
And we're going to keep you updated on Josh Harris, who's been on Comics on Parole several times.
You gave him his big
I
boost?
gave him his big start.
The rocket ship to the stars.
Very good. Thank you again, Art. It's a big honor.
Great to see you, man.
Thank you for tuning into Comics on Parole. Tune again in 2 weeks when we don't know who will be on, but they will be here. Remember, wherever you go, there you are. Thank you.